G'day viewers, this is Troy from Troy's Visual Arts channel. Here's the latest update on my Sanyo VTR-1000 project. In my last video I said I was going to take the motor to the workplace to get it looked at, and I did just that. Turns out that when my boss tested it, there is nothing wrong with the motor at all. He tested it with a 10 microfarad motor start capacitor, and he ran it for a good 10 minutes and it worked just perfectly fine. No overheating whatsoever. And there is no shorts in the windings at all, because otherwise there would have been burn marks, which there wasn't. All what happened was just the motor ran very, very hot, that's all. And the insulation on the winding wires don't melt under heat, at least not under the amount of heat that it had. So yeah, also the difference in resistance of windings, that's pretty much meant to be spot on, apparently. So according to my boss, it turns out that the motor's not the fault. The actual fault is this oil-filled capacitor here. I told him that the capacitance are actually correct on it, but he said even though that the capacitances are correct, the oil is either dried up or leaked out of the capacitor, in which the capacitor becomes a short over higher voltages. So you get like a breakdown over voltage, and you get short across the capacitors, and so you end up getting and when you get a short, you get a high surge of current, which I was getting over 3.2 amps in one of the windings, and it was therefore heating up. So yeah, the breakdown of capacitance over voltage has been causing it. It's the best way I can really describe it. So I mean, if this capacitor had oil in it, or if the oil hasn't dried up, it would probably be working fine, I'm guessing. So that's the problem. So my boss told me get a 5 microfarad motor start capacitor, which I just did. I ordered this online, and yeah, as you can see, the motor's working perfectly now. I've had it running for a good 10 minutes. The motor is warm, but it's not hot, so that's pretty much okay. Anyway, so that's that problem solved. The other problem I had to face was I snapped a couple of the bolts when I was undoing the motor. So I had to find a couple of similar bolts. I was going to go to the workplace and get some threaded rod cut, but it wasn't necessary because I found in my bolt collection a couple of long bolts that are very similar. Not the same though. Not even the same threading type neither. They're probably metric, whereas these are probably imperial. So it's still, I managed to get them to fit, and I cut them down to just near the right size. They also had some nuts with them, so I fitted a couple of nuts, and yeah, now they're. And I had to sort of do a bit more drilling of the holes that the rods go through, the bolts go through, because the had a bit of varnish on it. So I had to do that, and then yeah, they now fit through nicely. Also, yeah, one thing I forgot to mention at the workplace, I also got the coil dipped in varnish, just give it a re-varnish. Probably wasn't necessary, but it was kind of a good practice. So one of my workmates did that, and I had to sort of scrape off the excess varnish off the top here. Also had to wire brush the inside, scrape off the varnish that sort of seeped on the inside of the commutator of the motor, and yeah, I had to wire brush that off using a drill and a wire brush, which is over here. So yeah, I had to also scrape and wire brush, and it made it look a little bit nastier on the inside, but So you've got sort of like wire brush marks on the inside commutator, but it hasn't affected the motor. It's working perfectly fine. It's no longer rubbing against the commutator. I think that's what it's called, which it was previously doing. But anyway, it's all fixed up, and yeah, it's ready to go back inside the VTR. It's ready to be fastened inside. Anyway, stay tuned for the next video when I've got it all fastened in there. Also got to deal with these melted rubber tyres too. That's another thing I've got to deal with. But anyhow, one thing at a time. Stay tuned for the next video. This is Troy from Troy's Visual Arts channel, signing out.